Welcome everyone to the next webinar in the OfferVault training series. This is going to be part 2 in traffic generation, and we're going to continue these traffic webinars because this is one of the most frequent topics that I get on a regular basis for questions that are coming into OfferVault for both new affiliates and really seasoned affiliates. They're either looking to generate new traffic for a new niche or expand the traffic that they have in an existing niche that is performing really well. So that's what this series is all about. And tonight again is part 2. If you're just joining us and you have not had the opportunity to watch some of the other replays, when you log into your OfferVault account, just click the free training tab. And you're going to be able to scroll down here. You're going to see lots of webinars from the past, which you can, of course, feel free to watch. The new webinars in this series are starting on January 26th. Actually, it's funny. These dates are, I got to update these dates. It's not January 26th. The first one is actually going to be get accepted by affiliate networks today. So this is the first one. This date will be August in 2018. So we just uploaded these new players, so kind of messed with the dates, which is kind of funny. All right, so when you click on this, what you'll be able to do actually is click the little full screen icon, and you'll be able to watch the webinar in full screen, which is really helpful. So just wanted to share that with you as a way for you to watch these replays. So I do encourage everyone to watch the replays. Again, if you are a brand new affiliate, not familiar with how to sign up for an affiliate network or need tips in getting accepted by an affiliate network, you should watch this one first, Get Accepted by Affiliate Networks Today. And then you should also watch the third webinar in this series, which is the one top strategy to get accepted by affiliate networks. And then you can learn about pay-per-call, and then, of course, building a list. And then in the previous webinar, this was part 1 in traffic, which was all about keyword research and pay-per-click. Tonight, we're going to be talking about understanding demographics, thinking about buyer personas, and we're going to be talking about the Google Display Network. And next week, we're going to be talking about Facebook, and we're going to continue from there. We typically do these webinars on Tuesday evenings. Just this week with scheduling, we're doing it tonight on a Monday, but you should definitely add into your calendar every Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We hope that you can join us live. So any questions during these webinars, please type them in, and I look forward to answering them. And yes, Walt, the webinars replays will always be available on the free training page, and they're posted the next day after each webinar. We post pretty much the next morning or so. We post the replays for anyone who wants to watch it again if you're attending live. Okay, great. So again, we're going to be talking about buyer personas and understanding audience demographics in our marketing tonight. And we're going to be talking about, as I mentioned, the Google Display Network. And as you guys have questions about what I'm talking about or presenting, please make sure that you type them in the question box. And if you have a niche market or maybe a specific offer that you'd like me to take a look at and discuss live how we can generate more traffic for it, please make sure that you enter it in the question box, and I'm going to be happy to review that with you live. That's one of the benefits for attending the live sessions. Okay, so as I mentioned on every webinar, it's super important that we just focus on one task at a time. So for the next, 40, 45 minutes, something like that, you guys should shut off your cell phone notification, shut off Facebook Instant Messenger, don't check email. I really hope you're not trying to watch the football game and watch this at the same time. Again, from the research that I spent doing this summer for my own personal development, we can't multitask as the human brain. We switch back and forth, back and forth. So it's really important to be very engaged and focused in all of your tasks. And that's really the only thing that I ask from you for these webinars, is just focus. That's the best way to learn and take action. And the second part is taking action. Each week, as we talk about, it's important that you register for 10 new affiliate networks that you've not applied for yet. So if you're not familiar with how to use OfferVault, we're going to be doing more training on some of the new OfferVault features and advanced filters in the near future. But basically, you can go through some of the offers that you might be interested in or searching for it. And again, we've talked about this in some previous webinars also. Or what you could do is go right to the network tab and you can go right down the list and you could apply for, again, my suggestion is 10 networks each week. We have over 140 networks currently listed on OfferVault. There's new ones pretty much every week or two. There's new networks that are added. So this should keep you quite busy in just that one task for after each one of these webinar replays. Apply for 10 networks. Make sure that you click the Join Network button within OfferVault. It's critical because the networks can see that you're coming from OfferVault and they know the relationships that we have and the type of training that we're doing. So those are the two things that I ask of you guys. One is to make sure that you focus, and then the second one is to make sure that you're signing up for a minimum of 10 new affiliate networks each and every week. Okay, so let's get right into talking a little bit more about understanding the buyer personas and understanding the intent of our audience and the demographics of our audience. This is really one of the key elements that we need to consider for every campaign before we start. Last week in the traffic session number 1, we talked about keyword research. We talked a little bit about the start of pay-per-click, and we're going to be talking more and more about pay-per-click and conversion tracking and things like that as we get through this series. But to start, I think it's really important for us to lay down the foundation. So again, if you have not watched the first webinar about traffic and pay-per-click and keyword research, I do suggest that you go back and watch that replay. I think that would be very, very helpful. So when we're thinking about our marketing and our niche, it's really important that we don't just jump in and start running random ads, whether it's pay-per-click or on AdWords or Facebook or really any other type of advertising you may be running. It's critical that we stop, take a breath, and understand what the intent of our audience is. And what I mean by that, sort of the buyer intent, or in this case, if it's a CPA offer, the lead intent. What is going through their mind that's going to make them interested in taking the action that you are trying to monetize? And also, what are the demographics of your audience? So those are really some of the key things, the foundation that we have to start before you start running traffic for any campaign. And I don't care if you're a brand new affiliate and this is your first campaign, or if you're doing this for 20 years like I've been doing this. So I always start with those steps. And the reason why is it sets everything else I'm going to do. It allows me to measure and thinking about testing. It allows me to think about the type of media that I'm going to run. And it influences all of my decisions and scaling directly from day one. So one of the things that I did suggest in a previous webinar is that you create a Google Doc or Google Sheet, and that you always would have access to it on your mobile device, or whether it's a computer at work or a laptop at home or an iPad or whatever it is. A lot of people will use Microsoft Word or text editor on their computer, but the problem that I have with that, and the reason why I moved everything to, at least for me, kind of the Google Docs or Google Sheets, is that I can access it from anywhere. So even in the middle of the night, I wake up with an idea, I have access to those sheets, in sort of my app on my phone. So I think that's really, really important to just kind of track everything that we're doing, all of the steps. So let's get into it and let's start thinking about the mindset, the intent of what our consumers or prospects are, and then let's drill into some of the demographics that allows us to get into the shoes of our prospects and consumers and help them take the steps necessary to convert the action that you're focused on for you to monetize that event. So let's take a look here and see which niche markets that our attendees live would like me to take a look at. So let's take a look here. So homeowners insurance, okay? So someone here is running an advertisement for, or interested in running an advertisement for an offer. It's a lead capture for homeowners insurance. I definitely also suggest that you check OfferVault for some of the pay-per-call offers, and you can watch the replay that we did related to pay-per-call also. It'll give you another great way to start monetizing your traffic. But let's start here and take a look at homeowners insurance. So some of the first things that I would start doing is kind of jotting down the demographics. So when we think about homeowners insurance, we can think about what the audience is. So the audience of a homeowner, again, this is not a renter, right, is typically going to be what? 25, 28, 30 years old. So when we're starting to think about it like that, we're able to set those audiences directly within our campaigns, whether it's within Google for display that we're going to talk about tonight, or Facebook advertising that we're going to talk about next week, is you can start to set the age, the gender, and many, many other characteristics and demographics and affinities within these markets. So right off the bat, for homeowners, I would probably start with 30 plus. And for me, I start to think about the online audience and who's going to be comfortable with filling out a quote online versus maybe talking to a more traditional broker and things like that. So for me, I'm thinking, maybe up to maybe 30 years old, maybe up to 60, maybe up to 65. I think above that age, they're definitely online. They're using, web, the web and Facebook and all these other things. But you have to think about how likely is that demographic above maybe the age of 60 or 65, how comfortable do you think they're going to be, or how much would they trust a web form or paper call even, versus them talking to the broker? And maybe for those older demographics, I would probably actually test paper call because they might be more comfortable talking to an agent on a phone call versus even filling out a web form. So maybe I would even start to test up to 55, maybe 60, and maybe 60 and above. I would think about pay-per call, right? So that's another way to start to diversify the types of traffic that we are generating, is in running different types of offers and even thinking about how your different demographics or behaviors of your audience would interact with each of these types of offers. So let's think about here about running campaign for homeowners. So typically 30 years old, let's say to 60, 30 to 65 would be sort of an appropriate online audience. And let's start there. But before we do that, let's take a look at some of the ads that are currently running. And let's look at some of the top organic listings. I really like to look at all of the ads to understand the advertisers. And again, even if I'm running a display campaign or AdWords, I want to understand the type of copy, the imagery, the sort of call to action that all of the competitive advertisers are focused on, even if it's in a different channel. So even if you're running a Facebook campaign, you should be checking who's running on AdWords, and you should be checking who's running on display, and we'll talk about some of the display ads in a little bit. I also want to understand who's running in organic. So we could take a look at Geico, homeowners insurance, protect your investments. So we start to think of some of these more specific terms, and I would write this down. So I'd write protect, I would write investment. You're going to see that many of these offers are going to be geo-specific or offer specific. So I'd write down things like zip code targeting and things like that. So next, I would take a look at some of the ads that are running here. So they're starting here again with the zip code. So I'd write that down. So we're starting with kind of these zip code ads. And on OfferVault, you'll be able to find homeowners insurance ads that are also have a zip code as either the first page or the zip code as your payout within the overall offer. What I mean by the first page is you may have an offer on OfferVault that pays out on a lead or cost per action that has a multiple form submit. So they might start with a zip code and then some other information from that prospect, and it may be counted as a conversion later on in the flow, or it might pay out on a conversion for just a phone number, email address, or in this case, we're seeing kind of multiple zip codes. So I'm going to write down in my Google Sheet or Google Doc that I'm going to start looking for zip code offers on OfferVault for home insurance. Taking a look here, same thing, zip code, protect. So again, we're seeing this keyword again, kind of protect, come up multiple times, which is quite interesting. So here we have switch and save. This is more of a typical lead capture form here, right? Instead of going for zip submit to start. Here's progressive, again, starting with zip codes. Again, like 3 or 4 out of these are already starting with zip codes, which is kind of interesting. And we looked at Geico to start. So those are some of the first notes that I would take in thinking about the audience demographics, kind of 30 to 60 years old, maybe 65, keywords and things like that around protect, around investment. I mean, that to me is a really good start, and I'm definitely going to make a note that I am going to be looking for zip code offers in this market on OfferVault, just because, again, 3 or 4 out of the advertisers here were running those type of offers. Let me just take a look at questions. So again, as I'm running through this, please do ask questions. I want to be able to get to your questions live, and I want to be able to also look at your niche market. So again, we're looking at homeowners insurance from a member who typed that in. If you have a niche market that you'd like me to look at, please type it into the question box, and we're going to try to get to it live tonight. So let's go here into our Google AdWords account. And what's interesting is if you haven't used AdWords in a bit, they've changed the user interface, and they change it on a regular basis. And they're trying to really kind of merge a lot of the UI, user interface, and functionality between kind of the pay-per-click on sort of thinking about keywords and display advertising together in really more of a cohesive interface. So this is setting up a campaign in AdWords in display. And when we can think about display ads, we can think about, in a lot of ways, typical banner advertising. And running banners on Google allows us to target, instead of on keywords, which we can also do, but instead of being exclusively focused or limited on keywords, we can start to think about the personas or the audience demographics and the affinities and the intent of and behavior of our audience. So this is sort of a different way of targeting versus last week when we were talking about keyword research as sort of the foundation for pay-per-click. This is another way of understanding and thinking about our marketing. So when we're approaching display, we can start to think about what a content site would look like. So if we go back here, let's go back to friendly old Google. Let's just say here, let's type in forum, right? Because what you'll typically see on forums is you'll see a mix of AdWords, in this case, kind of AdSense for publishers running, but you're also going to see a lot of display ads. So let's just take a quick look. I mean, everyone on the call should be pretty familiar with getting your run into banners all the time online, but I think it'd be useful to kind of take a look here and see what we can find. Of course, the ones I'm looking at, I'm not even seeing ads pop up directly, which is interesting. So this is an affiliate offer that they're running here. So they're running this instead of a display ad. Let's take a look here. See if this is going to load. Of course, when you want to look at it live, you don't see it, but here's one. Here's a display ad, and this is running most likely through the Google Display Network. And the way that you can tell is on the majority of banners, especially in the US, in different countries, you'll see sort of different services for privacy, but here in the US, you'll see ad choices many times. So if we click on ad choices, you can tell this is running from the Google Display Network, and you can see that you can control your ad settings and whatnot. So this even tells you where it's running from, which is pretty exciting. So this, as you can see, is actually set up as a text ad on the display network, which we can take a look at. So you're not required anymore to even run an image ad. So in the past, when we thought about display banners, a lot of marketers were hesitant or felt sort of gun shy about launching a display ad because they either did not know how to create an image ad or banner advertisement, or they weren't used to working with outsourcers to help you do it and things like that. So creating image ads is very easy. There's many sort of free resources for banner builders on different sites, like for Facebook and for Google. On Upwork or Fiverr, I mean, it's super cheap to just get some banners created. So I do always suggest that you run both, that you run sort of these text presentation ads the way that I just showed you on the previous page within AdWords, but also to create image ads. So we start to see here as an image ad, this is probably a 300 by 250 ad. The ad that I showed you before was 728 by 90 or sort of a higher res kind of version of that aspect ratio. So again, I do encourage you to definitely think about creating very, very simple image ads. So here's another example of a banner ad. But what's an awesome opportunity within the Google Display Network within your AdWords account is it does give you the opportunity to also just use your text ads in a similar way that you would use AdWords, and it would display it there for you. And I've definitely seen cases where text-based ads are going to convert even better than image-based ads. But I do suggest that you test both, and I mentioned some strategies and methods for running or for creating very, very simple banner ads also. So interesting. So of course the sites I'm looking at are not ad heavy, which is always kind of funny, right? That's the beauty of doing these live webinars. But you guys get the point. You've seen banner ads, I'm sure, before, and I showed you how sort of a text-based ad within the Google Display Network is going to display also, which is quite powerful also if you're not creating. Or my suggestion is again to run both a specific image ad and also the text ads too. Let's see if we see any more, and then we're going to go into the demographic and understanding some of the behavioral targeting also. So it's funny here, when I'm looking here, it's mostly lead gen forms. I'm not even seeing a ton of display ads, which is kind of funny. But you guys get the point, and you see exactly what these ads look like from before. So this gives you, if you type in about the Google Display Network, I do suggest you watch this little video. I think it's also going to help fill in some of the blanks that we have from tonight also. All right, let me see what are the questions we have here. Okay, good. So a lot of people are typing in their niche markets. So let's continue for just a moment or more on this homeowners insurance niche, and please continue typing in your niche markets, and we're going to jump to yours also. So we're going to go back here, and what's very important in any ad campaign that you're creating is make sure that you pay attention to your geo-targeting. So if you have an ad that runs across the US or another country, you type it at that level. If you're going to have specific cities or states or even zip codes, make sure that you include those directly. For things like zip code or lead capture forms for insurance, many times they're geo-targeted where they may focus on certain states or they may exclude certain states. Make sure you pay attention to that, because if you're running ads outside of approved geos, you're just not going to be compensated for that traffic. So really important. The other key thing that I talked about in the last webinar, and we'll also talk about this more in Facebook next week, is this is critical, that you need to target people in your targeted locations. And the reason why, and also again, you could also target excluded locations here. And the reason why is that you will not get compensated If someone lives in Chicago and you're running an insurance ad for New York and they're typing in, New York Jets because they want to see if they lost last evening or whatever, which they did, then what's going to happen is if you pick people who are interested in this, then your ad may show up for that. And you will not get compensated because the person completing that lead generation form would be in Chicago. So this is critical. And I did talk about this last week also, that you pay attention to not only the geo-targeting, but that you go to location options. And again, this is an AdWords for and you sort of pay-per-click keywords, but also for display, that you make sure you select people in your targeted locations, and also if you're excluding locations, just super, super important. Languages are very important. And we can think about bid strategies. So you can start to think about things like your higher quality traffic, your conversion value, your clicks, your viewable impressions. For me, I start with clicks. When we start to talk about in our next webinars in the future about conversion tracking goals, we can start to think about other and optimizing for conversion goals. And we'll do this not only again for AdWords and display, but also within Facebook also in the future. But to start, I like to pay for clicks and I like to optimize towards clicks just to start. And again, we'll talk about more of the bid types in the future. I like to manually set my bids. If you let Google maximize your clicks, they will spend your budget as soon and as quickly as they can, whether it's going to optimize or kind of back out for you or not. So there are cases if I'm using some conversion optimization goals or if I'm running specific types of campaigns within Facebook or Google that I may select that. But in these initial campaigns that we're going to be paid for on a click basis, you should make sure that you're manually setting your bids. Really, really important. Otherwise, things are going to get absolutely crazy. Okay, sorry, we're just reading some other questions here. So critical, critical, critical that you're manually setting your bids here. Very, very important. And again, we're paying for clicks here. Let me see if there's any questions on that. We will talk about other bid types, I promise. But we're going to just focus right now on driving and optimizing for clicks. You could also play around with setting bid strategies directly. So again, there's lots of advanced options for bidding, and I promise in future webinars we will get through that. So setting your daily budget's really important. You should always spend within your means. For me, for most markets, I want to be able to generate enough clicks to be able to determine which audiences or which keywords, if you're doing PPC from last week, are working. So again, don't think that it should be $10 a day. I just put a placeholder there. But when I'm really considering my campaigns, I'm really thinking about what I should be spending per day, and to have a budget for multiple days. Really, really important. You should not blow your whole budget on one day for multiple reasons. One, you want to make sure that you have time to optimize and test. Number two, day parting in the future is going to be very important. We're going to have another traffic webinar in the future in OfferVault where we're going to talk about what day parting is when we're controlling when our ads run by day of week and or time of day. And again, that's really important. So really important that you leave enough budget to run for multiple days. Also consider about weekends and holidays. Traffic is going to perform really differently. So for me, I like to run, sort of 5 days minimum. So if you can run Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, that's okay. If you can run for a whole week, that's even better. That way you can get a feel for the day parting. But at a minimum, I'm always running a campaign Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And I think that's just important for you to manage your budget for everything that you're doing. Delivery methods. You need to select standard. There are some cases for specific campaigns in the future that you may want to run accelerated. just because it's pay per call and there's certain hours that you find convert the best, and you're using day parting. So that we will talk about accelerated delivery methods on sort of some future webinars. But for right now, again, select standard. So if you selected delivery method accelerated, and if you selected automatically maximize clicks, whatever your daily budget is, Google's going to spend it super quickly, and most of the time that's not going to be to your benefit, right? It's to Google's benefit, right? Because they want to spend your whole budget every day, right? So again, be careful with these settings. Let me just check if there's any live questions about this, and we're going to continue. Okay, great. So again, please continue typing in your niche markets. So ad rotations, again, we're going to be talking about conversion optimizations and things like that in the future. You should just leave it on optimize your best performing ads. So when you're running multiple ads, which again, we will talk about in future sessions, you should definitely always be optimizing for best performance ads. For ad scheduling, this is day parting that I was discussing before. Unless your campaign requires day parting, so really pay-per-call in general does not run 24/7. They typically will have certain hours, pay attention to the time zone, or they may not run on weekends, things like that. So unless you're running a campaign that requires day parting, I run all day, every day to start, just to make sure that we're starting to see enough traffic over those, again, minimum of 4 or 5 days that I described before, so you can test this over time. You never want to make a decision on a few hours worth of traffic or even 1 day worth of traffic. So very, very important. So end dates. I always set an end date. And for me, I set the goals of my campaign. So if I'm running a 4 or 5 day campaign, I'll set an end date. That way I'll make sure that the campaign ends. And I'm usually optimizing my campaigns at minimum of once a day. So I should say I'm always optimizing my campaigns a minimum once a day. I'm usually optimizing my campaigns multiple times a day. So setting an end date, just make sure that, if you wind up offline for a day or whatever, that, your campaign is going to start and end, and you're going to have that sort of window of, 4 or 5 days, at a minimum. 7 days is even better to be able to test through the traffic. Devices is really important. So if you're running an offer that is accepted on all devices, run it on all devices, and then we're going to talk about in the future optimizing conversions for desktop versus mobile. If you're running a mobile specific offer, or if you're running an offer that excludes mobile traffic, then make sure you select your specific devices. But to start, I am going to run here. If you're running an offer that is a CPI, or cost per install, or an app install offer, then you need to get into device models and operating systems. If you're running an offer that is looking for specific carriers and networks, you can even do that. But to start with, again, I'm just running on all devices, unless the offer requires specific device targeting. And if that's the case, make sure you follow it, because again, you're not going to get paid for not ineligible traffic. Really, really important. Over time, again, we're going to talk about these sort of more advanced features on the future webinar series with an OfferVault. And again, remember, set your calendar every Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Tonight was an unusual evening on Monday because of scheduling this week. So we're going to be talking more about, again, device optimization and conversion optimization in the future too. So frequency capping, I actually, from day one, like to use frequency capping. So frequency capping sets the number of impressions, or the number of times your ad will be shown to an individual user within a period of time. So over time, there's lots of really interesting concepts on how to do frequency capping and test with it. And again, we will talk more about that on future webinars where we get into more advanced targeting. But to start right now, what I would do is I do set a frequency cap per day. And you can do for your whole account or ad group or this campaign. For me, I usually will do for the campaign. And I typically like to cap at 3 times per day. Sometimes people do this per week, and we will have a more advanced conversation on a future OfferVault webinar on frequency capping optimization. I ran and sold a display network, so I have a lot of data on how to optimize around frequency capping, and all of my research in the past is to start with 3 impressions per day, and then over time you can modify it, and I will provide training on what to do with it. So that's my advanced tip today. Again, I'm trying to keep everything very, very straightforward for today, but I think it is important that we do at least set our cap on viewable impressions to 3 impressions per day at a campaign level. We're not going to worry about our dynamic ads and content exclusions and campaign euros. So again, we're not going to worry about that yet. Always make sure you name your campaigns and your ad groups. You want to pay attention to that. And I like to track that in my Google Doc or Google Sheet. Every campaign name, every ad set, every ad, I write it down. So that way I can make notes about when I might be pausing an ad or cloning an ad or adding budget to an ad, and making notes on which ones I think are converting. And I say, hey, this ad looks like it's doing really well on Tuesday. I write that down. So after I collect more data and it's statistically significant, then I can start adding day parting for specific ad on Tuesday. And don't think you will remember this. It is so hard in one niche with one campaign. And once we start scaling and you're running on display and AdWords for PPC, for keywords, and you're running on Facebook and you're running video advertising, we're doing all these things. It is super hard to track this. Trust me, I write everything down. Never think you will remember a change that you made to an ad campaign or an insight that you have. You have to write everything down. It's one of the most important things that I can teach you. It saves me on a really, really frequent basis. We're going to go to people who you want to reach for audience and demographics in a moment. And we're going to be talking about content targeting. So your conservative automation, I would just leave this here. We'll talk about this in the future. Just leave this as the default. When you start working with conversion optimization goals, that starts to play through your maximum CPC bid. You want to make sure that you're bidding reasonably within the range for your campaign, right? So, and what you'll see is that if you're bidding too low, you're just not going to gain any traffic, right? So you want to make sure that you have a reasonable bid for your campaign. And we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about more about bidding strategies, and we'll talk about some average cost per clicks that we can start to thinking about. And then next week we'll also talk about creating ads a little bit more. Maybe we'll do sort of a quick ad tonight. So what I want to do now is let me just check what questions we have. Please do continue typing in niches. I'm going to see if we can try to get some other some other niches in. So James has a good question. So I said, you mentioned the number of days to run. So he's saying, is the number of clicks also important? So yes, the number of clicks is important. When we start to think about something that's statistically significant, you want to be able to gain enough traffic over a period of time to understand what's working and what's not. So number of clicks is definitely important. But the challenge with the reason why I have a challenge with an absolute rule there is it's based on your budget. So if you're going to test an ad group for $50, I'd rather see you spend $10 or $12, whatever, for 4 days or for 5 days, $10, and generate the number of clicks that you can versus just running all of your clicks within 1 day. Just because, again, there's just so much we're going to start to see in day parting and traffic behavior. So for me, again, the number of clicks would be important. How many clicks would I like to see per day, per offer? To me, I think if you're running anything less than 30 clicks a day, I think it's really difficult to optimize and gain data. But based on your budget, if you're not able to afford that initially, then don't be stuck. Just put a low daily bid, let it run for multiple days, and see how the traffic is performing. So it's, for me, at a minimum, I really want to see 30 clicks per day for a minimum of 5 days. So I'm thinking at least 150 to 120 to, let's say, 200 clicks. So average 150 clicks per ad group, per kind of campaign is really what I'm thinking of to be able to see what's working and what's not, so I can start to optimize. So that's a great, great question. Okay, let's continue here. So again, we talked about leaving your automated targeting. We talked about bids. We'll talk more about bids next week. So let's talk about more about the demographics here and thinking about our audience. Let's scroll down to the appropriate place. Sorry, my machine runs super slow when I have the webinar running and recording. Here we go. Of course, now it's skipping it. Sorry. Again, computer does not love when the webinars are recording. Okay, so people who you want to reach. This is how we define our audience demographics, or both. So we can learn more about the target audiences, and we're going to get to that. We're going to start with demographics. So we're going to reach people based on age, gender, parental status, household income. So what I like to do here is really pay attention to our targeting and demographics. This is the difference from the start and tracking this and writing this down for every ad group that you're setting up, to track this very, very specifically and to understand exactly what campaigns are targeting what in that Google Sheet or Google Doc. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to quickly remember it. You're going to have to dig through all of these campaigns over time. So to start with, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start targeting. Again, we're still thinking about home insurance leads here. So I will get rid of unknown. And the reason why is, this can be okay if age is not super important for your niche. But when it comes to home ownership or home insurance, age to me is actually a very, very important demographic key. So I'm thinking 25 to 34 through 55 to 64. And, then the question becomes, is even, 25 to 34, is that too young? What I would probably do is I'd probably create this campaign at 35 to 64. And actually thinking about it, I would probably create this campaign and I'd want to focus on kind of 35 through 54 a little bit. But to start with, since we're starting to collect data, I think it's okay to run 25 through 64. And then you can look at the performance of the campaign as it's running. And we can start to see how users in the different age demographics are performing. But I would consider tracking this really closely, and I'm going to want to understand how kind of the top and bottom of these age brackets are going to work. I would have to say, if you do have a limited budget in a niche like this, I probably would suggest running less age groups, maybe 35 to 44, even by itself, or maybe 35 through 54. So again, I would consider, if you have a limited budget, really targeting more specific age bands, because that way your testing budget will be able to run more impressions, more clicks through that demographic targeting. So for now in this campaign, I'm going to leave both. For me, gender as far as your home leads isn't very important. I think you'll find over time, when you're running the campaign, you start to optimize towards conversions, you may find that certain types of offers or leads will convert better for females or males. And if that's the case, then you can include that in your demographic marketing. For these type of offers, I would start with gender set for all here. So parental status is interesting. So when you think about home ownership and you're thinking about insurance, how important is, parental status here? So I would love to see all three of these elements actually tested. And to start with, I would probably consider, if you're running a smaller campaign, to just run with parental status as a parent. And why would I do that? Is that would, again, allow me to run in a more narrow demographic target. I'd be able to reach more users within a testing budget. And then I would test over time, not a parent and unknown probably together. I think that's probably fine. And as you're scaling, you can run them individually. But in this case, for setting up a campaign, you really want to think about setting a narrow demographic range. If you're too specific in your targeting, then one of two things or both can happen. One, your costs and the cost per click will typically go higher because you're being more specific in the users you need to reach. And also you're limiting your reach, or you're limiting the number of your addressable audience. But that's okay. If you look at the United States, for any gender, 35 to 54 who are parents, it's a pretty big market. You can also start to think about home ownership, and how household income has impacted this. So I would focus on the 40% plus here, and I would probably remove the lower 50% and unknown. And the other way to think about it is, your top 10%. So when I really think about the demographics of this audience, how likely is someone who's earning, half a million, $1 million, whatever the top 10% is, to fill out a web form to complete it? I mean, it would be nice, and your advertisers would probably love that because it'd be a pretty big, home that they're trying to insure or something like that. But when we really think about the demographics, how likely is that audience to be able to interested in completing an offer? The same way that we talked about, the older demographic here, are they going to fill out a web form? I mean, maybe they'd be interested in pay per call, but let's just say this is like a zip code submit or something like that. I'm going to want to stick within a range that is likely to own a home, so 35 to 54. We're going to say parents are, again, more likely to own a home. And to me, I'm going to get rid of the lower 50. I'm going to get rid of unknown. I'm going to get rid of top 10%. So I'm going to want to understand kind of this range. And in some ways, 11 to 20%, maybe you could even slim down there. But again, you want to consider in your targeting that you have enough addressable reach. So to me, I would kind of think about this as a good start. And again, you'd have enough traffic if you got rid of your 11 to 20. But we're going to stick here. And this will talk about which countries is available. And again, so this targeting is going to look different in different countries, which is something that you should definitely really kind of understand and consider. Let me see if there's any questions. So again, so people are saying they get it, they understand the importance of the demographics. So this is all about doing the research first. So I'm not going in here and guessing. I looked at the competitive ad sets, I looked at the market, and I wrote down in my Google Sheet, Google Doc, what audience I feel would fit here, and I'm making some assumptions, right? So we don't know whether the parental status is going to convert better or worse. We don't know, again, I wouldn't here for home ownership even thinking about 18 to 24, I would skip. So we don't know, the household income, but we want to start with some assumptions that make sense, that fit within the buyer persona. We want to apply those, and then we start to scale from there. And again, this applies in the way that we think about our ad copy, the imagery that we might use in our banners. So the way, whether it's an image of a person or a house, again, we'd think about how that fits this buyer persona and the demographics of the user. We're going to think about this a lot, and you're going to see a lot of similarities here also to Facebook targeting. When we talk about Facebook targeting in the future, you're going to see really how the lessons that we learned tonight with demographic targeting are going to directly apply in sort of this behavioral targeting when we think about Facebook also. Next, let's think about the audiences and who should see our ads. So we can start here from the bottom. So we're going to skip remarketing and similar audiences right now. As you start to build more traffic, we're going to really focus on remarketing. So remarketing is going to be a whole dedicated traffic webinar that we're going to do in these OfferVault series that you're going to definitely want to pay attention to. But again, that's more advanced training, so we're not even going to worry about this tonight. Let's start here what their interests and habits are, and this is about affinities and understanding this. So to me, I'm looking through here. So vehicles, not important. Travel, technology, sport, shoppers, news, politics, no. Lifestyles and hobbies. So home and garden is kind of interesting. So I want to understand home ownership. So you could definitely run a campaign and understand do-it-yourselfers or home decor enthusiasts, because again, these are very likely to actually own a home. So again, you can include these in here, and you can include the top level here would actually include both of your subcategories below. Food and dining, no. Beauty and wellness. So banking and finance is kind of interesting. So you could start to think about, would people interested in banking and finance, would they be more likely to be a homeowner, and does that fit within the demographics? So in this case, we can click it, just because what I'd like to do is start to think about a narrow audience band. Because we're talking about here, if it's the whole US, if the zip offer that you're going to run from an OfferVault network, if it has specific states or whatnot, make sure you're including or excluding. But if we're just starting, we want to start within a narrow band. And if you're going to have a limited testing budget, start with something, and then you can start cloning the campaigns and either adding and removing, affinities or interests. So to me, when I start to think about it, is a homeowner is probably interested in banking and finance, right? It kind of makes sense for them to be interested in home and garden and banking and finance. So for the lifestyles and hobbies and things like that, media and entertainment, we can get into all of this targeting in the future, and you can start to see how we can test at this level. So, for me, like family focused could also be interesting. And the reason why is I'm starting to say, like, we're targeting here, let's target, parents who are likely to be homeowners who are interested in banking, home decor, and family focus. So this kind of fits within this model of demographics, or this buying persona that we're building. So this to me is sort of a really interesting way to start building our campaigns from the ground up in a well thought out manner. So I know people might be thinking like, oh, I just want to jump in and just run my first campaign, and you can do that. But the likelihood of you seeing a return on that first campaign, if you're not putting in the time to planning the keyword research from the previous webinar and understanding the audience demographics and affinities and sort of that buyer persona that we taught and talked about tonight, your odds of success are just going to be really low. Then it's just really about luck. It's about you throwing things against the wall and hoping they stick. And the problem with that is, if something starts to work, you won't even know what parts of the campaign or targeting or audience is even working at all. So that's why, for me, I'm so focused from the beginning of paying attention to understanding the demographics and buying persona of my audience. If you start with this, and if you take good notes in your Google Docs or Google Sheet for your campaigns, everything else is a building block. So awesome. So I think we covered a lot tonight, and you should be able to apply this to any of your niche markets. On the next OfferVault traffic series, it's going to be Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Please mark that on your calendar for every single Tuesday night. We hope that you can join us live. If not, all of the replays are always available directly on the membership site for you. And next week, we're going to continue talking about some of the display audience targeting opportunities, and we're going to talk about how do we create ads directly within the Google Display Network. And then we're going to be moving on to Facebook advertising. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking in the future about retargeting, conversion optimization, and really some more advanced strategies such as day parting. But we wanted to start from the beginning and have you guys have the right foundation. So this is Howie Schwartz. This was a traffic-focused webinar within the OfferVault series. We appreciate that you joined us live. If you came late, the replay will be posted on the OfferVault free training tab. Focus, take action, watch the replays multiple times, take notes, and again, make sure you're signing up for your 10 affiliate networks from the network or from specific offer pages within OfferVault each and every week. Thanks again. This is Howie Schwartz. Have an awesome evening.